On today's Locked On Giants podcast, Coach Gene Clemens of Giants Country joins me to talk combine workouts and Giants personnel strategy. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, a credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country. And I want to send a shout out to my everydayers, my Blue Crew community members, my newcomers, and everybody in between. You're all appreciated and loved. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. If you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And joining me is fellow credentialed member of the New York Giants media, Coach Gene Clemens, writes for me over on Giants Country. Does a fantastic job. If you are not checking out his combine notes and his mock drafts and his prospects and all the other great stuff he's doing, what are you waiting for? You're missing out on some good stuff here. So, Coach Gene, happy to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a really interesting combine. Probably for me, let's just get firing off hot. Like, this is probably the most disappointing combine I've ever watched.
Why do you say that?
Lack of participation. Lack of participation, and not just the people at the top, because it's like low-hanging fruit, right? Let's all just shoot at the same people. It's like when we all just identify the same like 5 or 6 people in the draft that we're all interested in. The draft is so much more than that. It's so much more vast. My belief is that you don't really need the draft. The combine, if you are one of those elite level prospects. But those elite level prospects are few and far between. So to see so many people not do the 3-cone drill, not do the pro agility, not run a 40, not do on-field workouts, not like what are you doing? Like, it's only there to help. Like, there's never been a time where it hurts. Like, it only helps. Like, if you're somebody that's an elite level defensive back and you run a slower time than what was expected, they'll just wait until your pro day and you run a better time in your pro day. All is forgiven. Like, never have you ever seen someone who is an elite level prospect go to the combine, not do as well as expected, and then all of a sudden plummet in the draft. What you see is people shoot up the draft because of what they do in the combine, which maybe is a flawed logic, but we see it all the time. So why not take advantage of it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why even bother showing up? You can give the spot to somebody else, I suppose.
Exactly.
But Gene, let's talk about, some of your takeaways from the combine. You, of course, did daily reports over at Giants Country, got stock up, stock down. Now, obviously, there's a lot more than that you could have you could cover. You could probably write, literally pages upon pages. So you were just kind of going with the highlights. But who are some of the surprises amongst the different position groups, especially where the Giants have a need?
Well, I'll tell you, I was not expecting Xavier Worthy to run 4.21. I thought he would be fast. I thought he would be dynamic, but I did not expect 4.21. To me, that one was out of left field. And with so many receiver and DB needs for the Giants, it's so many prospects that should look good to you. I actually, in my mock draft, I pointed to Leggett as somebody that the Giants should target somewhere around in day 3. He had a fantastic combine, but watching Xavier Worthy run a 4.21 it's crazy, because he knew he was running fast. That's the thing that was like enjoyable about it. He knew the moment that he clips the line that he had done something special, because you can feel it. When I would run the 40, I know what a 4.6 versus a 4.5 versus a 4.4 felt like when I was running. And I'm pretty sure that he probably clips that line and said, yo, I just put up a big number. Like, I put up a ridiculous number. He could feel it. And shout out to him, because the combine has become a competition all to itself. And so watching him perform and be able to do something no one's ever done, that was special to watch. But
yeah, indeed.
if you're a Giants fan and you know that you need defensive back help, you know that you need receiver help, you know you need edge rusher help, you know you need depth in the inside linebacker, you know you need offensive line help, you might want to look at a project or a tight end to add somewhere in day 3. You have to feel really good about this draft. Those people were out there performing, and it was a fantastic thing to watch when I'm thinking about the needs of the Giants and how many people performed well. I believe there were 8 to 9 cornerbacks that all went sub 4.4 in the 40. So many wide receivers who jumped over 40 inches in the vertical jump. That's elite level explosion. And those are the types of things that the Giants need to add in abundance. They just need more of the things that they have right now. They need to be able to build the depth and build out ways to overcome injuries that have plagued them over the last few seasons.
Now, Gene, everybody obviously wants to know about the quarterbacks. There's been some debate about whether guys like J.J. McCarthy helped their stock. And I know, not all the quarterbacks worked out and tested. And I know that was a disappointment for you. But based on, what you've looked at as far as the film on the quarterbacks, those that did test, those that did decide to throw, did the top of the order change a little bit? Because initially, remember, a lot of people went in thinking it was going to be Williams, Daniels, and May as the top 3, and then everybody else, day 2. Do you think that changed?
I think it always changes because people are always reaching for quarterbacks. In my opinion, there are 2 guys I would feel comfortable taking in the first round, and then everybody else would filter into the second round. As much as I like Michael Penix Jr., and I think that he's a first round talent, to me, the medicals probably take you off of him as a first round talent, because you just want to hedge that bet. As far as McCartney, I've never really, it's not really my kind of guy. Like, to me, I see Daniel Jones 2.0. Like, when I see him, I don't see a guy who was going to come in and be able to do anything special. I look at the way in which he was used. I always think it's funny that we assign certain people to say, oh, well, he was just a winner. We give certain people that he was just a winner pass, and then other people we don't. And I think that he is getting the he just won pass right now. And my entire thing is, if he was that dynamic with a head coach who's a quarterback and an offensive line that's always one of the best in the nation, then why is it they run the ball so much? Why is it they take the ball out of his hands in the critical times and they give it to a running back? To me, that says everything I need to know about whether or not he should be placed in a position with the ball in his hands. The guy who is the man. We all agree that Jim Harbaugh has an expertise when it comes to this position and how to get the best out of this position. And his idea for getting the best out of that position with that guy was to give it to the running backs 40 plus times a game. And so I think it's still Caleb Williams because of the upside and the ridiculous raw ability. It's Jaden Daniels because of his body of work and the athleticism he brings to the table. And then you can start to shake him up from there. Drake May, I think, falls right in line with the Penix Juniors and the McCartys and all of those guys. To me, I don't see what others see when they look at Drake May or when they look at JJ McCarthy.
Gene, what about receiver? Obviously, the Giants need a number one receiver. You think Marvin Harrison Jr., you think Rome Odunze, you think Malik Neighbors. Who do you like in that group? And who else is maybe sneaking up, you think, to that first round consideration?
Well, I think for me, Neighbors is the class. I know that everyone loves Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think a lot of people love Marvin Harrison Jr. because his name's Marvin Harrison Jr. Not necessarily just because he is the unquestioned best talent in the draft. I think that those three guys are very close, but I like the dynamic that Neighbors brings to the table in working underneath in the intermediate, along with his ability to be able to stretch the field. I love Rome Odunze. To me, I would have him slated in as third, but really more like a 2B to Marvin Harrison Jr. His ability to not only work outside but work in the slot, I think it's valuable today. The versatility that you're looking for. But then when you start going back, like I said, Xavier Leggett at 6'1.5", 6'2", 230 pounds, he is AJ Brown 2.0. So if you like AJ Brown and you like what AJ Brown does, why would you not like what Leggett does? Worthy just ran 4.21. I'm sorry, he's going to shoot up the rankings. And on top of that, when you put the film on, he produces as well. I think there were probably 15 to 16 wide receivers who could legitimately lay claim to a first round grade that won't go in the first round. So I don't believe that the Giants have to reach. I also don't believe that the Giants need to succumb to, we need a number one. Who's the number one wide receiver in Kansas City?
Travis Kelce.
Right? Travis Kelce is a tight end, and Rashee Rice is the number one. If you really want to be technical about it, especially if you're just taking how they played this year, this was Travis Kelce's worst year as a pro in maybe 8 years. So when you look at Rashee Rice, you don't say Rashee Rice is somehow this can't miss, number one. But when you got your quarterback right, everybody looks like a number one. And that's the place you have to remember. So I think that the Giants need to look to continue to build depth, build competition, have 5 and 6 and 7 wide receivers that all are really good, that you can just plug and play as you need, and get your trigger man right. Get a guy that's willing to release the ball, and I think you take care of a lot of those issues. And who cares if somebody's really the wide receiver one, or if you just have a bunch of number twos that are killing it.
All right. And speaking of that, Gene, in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about how the Giants should approach filling some of their needs. We'll, of course, touch upon quarterback. We'll talk about Saquan Barkley, Xavier McKenna, some of the, unrestricted free agents, and then some. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find that your assigned therapist isn't a match, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. All right, everybody, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm Patricia Traina, and I'm joined by Coach Gene Clemens. Yes, he is a football coach, hence why we call him that. Got to give the man his due because he works at it. And we are talking Giants Combine. We're going to talk about Giants personnel strategy. And Gene, in a few days, free agency will be upon us. I think we got to start with the quarterback situation. Joe Schoen has said that they will add to the quarterback room Daniel Jones, the expectation, that's the key word here, not he will be, but the expectation is he will start once healthy. But how do you realistically see the best case scenario for this Giants team at quarterback? Because they are kind of at a crossroads here. I believe they're going to probably add a veteran. I could see them adding, a draft pick because next year's class is just not as good as this year's class. But how do you see this kind of playing out for them?
First off, I think next year's class is much better than a lot of people think. I believe that Shedeur Sanders would be, for me, he would be QB1 in this draft. I think he is the most poised, most polished, most ready for the bright lights quarterback there is out there. I do take Joe Schoen at face value when he says that Daniel Jones is the guy. And so if we're going to just operate under the believe the guy who actually pulls the trigger on, what we're supposed to do, then I think that it would make a lot of sense to run back QB1 and QB2. You have to be, I just don't know what this man has to do in order to convince people that the game just seems different when he's pulling the trigger. But Tyrod Taylor didn't do anything to hurt his star at the end of the season. And I've heard that there are talks about him possibly coming back. I think that they would probably want to get a little bit more cap-friendly number for him if he was to return than they had the last couple of years. I think you come back with Jones. You've got Tyrod Taylor. Those are two guys who both understand. I think it's two guys who both understand the offense. They understand what Brian Dable and Mike Kafka want to get done. And so that gives them the leg up. You bring in a veteran that's coming in. Now he has to learn everything. And so I don't know if that's the way. I could see them running back QB1 and QB2 and bringing in a day two quarterback that they can now bring in and see what they could do. I would love to see them get a Michael Penix Jr. in the second round or in the third round to be able to add to that fold a guy who's not afraid to unleash it deep. I'd like to see them go in and take a fire on Joe Milton on day 3. And a guy who has very similar traits to Josh Allen, big, strong, with a rocket launcher for an arm. We call him Bazooka Joe in my friend group because his arm is so crazy and sometimes you don't know where it's going, but it reminds you a lot of what Josh Allen had going on coming out of Wyoming. He never played at the level that Joe Milton played at. And so I think that that's the best way to go. And then if things don't work out, now you set yourself up having gotten from underneath the heavy lifting of Daniel Jones' contract. Now you're into the much more manageable kind of get out of jail free card portion of his contract to then make a move if you so choose to, whether that is to go out and get a free agent that you can bring in to be the guy, or to go and draft your quarterback of the future without having to mortgage, first round draft picks for the next 2 years or most of your draft this year.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Gene, another, big decision coming up is Saquon Barkley. The franchise tag transition tag window closes March 5th. Joe Schoen has not ruled it out. I've always been of the opinion that they're going to use it if they don't get a deal done, but not necessarily to carry Saquon on the franchise tag. I could see a potential for a tag and trade if the two sides have a wide gulf between them, as opposed to what the Giants think he's worth, what Saquon thinks he's worth. But that said, how do you see that playing out?
I'll tell you the two different things. I'm going to tell you what I think plays out and what I wish would play out. I think they're going to tag Saquon because it just, for them, they don't want to lose that level of talent and give him the ability to kind of call his own shot. I thought it was really, really dirty work last year, not only tagging him, but putting him on the unrestricted, or what do they call it?
He received non-exclusive.
The non-exclusive tag. And so they put him on a non-exclusive tag, but everybody understands that the non-exclusive tag means that a team has to not only give a contract, but then forfeit legitimate high-level draft picks in order to bring that person in. Nobody wants to do that. No, the draft picks are the goal. Now that there's a rookie wage scale in place, you're not paying your first round draft picks $70 million out the gate. Those draft picks have become infinitely more valuable. And so, like, giving up a bunch of draft picks to get a guy and then having to pay the guy is not the way to build your team. And so to put him under that and make it seem as if nobody was really interested in him, I thought was dirty work. So I think they will tag him. I don't think they will get a longer term contract done, because if you didn't value him to get a long-term contract done last year, why would you value him to get a long-term contract done this year? You'll let him play out that number. That's a decent number for a running back to get in one season. And then they'll probably move on next year to whomever they decide they want to move on to. What I would love for them to do is, if they're not willing to give this man a 3-year contract, that the numbers work for them, to just let him go. Like, what else does he need to do? He is a homegrown product. He's been Giant loyal. He's lived through the same way that Daniel Jones has had to live through these worst offensive lines ever. Saquan Barkley's had to live through them as well. And no one ever takes that into consideration when thinking about Barkley's production. But let him go. Let him move on. If you don't see him in your future, move on and go out here and draft one of these running backs that can come in and make a difference, because they're out there. There's a lot of talent at running back out there. And if you really want to move on and turn the page, it's really not to go into free agency and bring in another guy that's probably going to cost you a little bit more. Is to go into the draft and roll your dice on those guys in the draft and bring in a low money veteran to go with them.
Gene, we probably should have started with the offensive line, because we all know that if that offensive line isn't fixed, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter who the receivers or the running backs or the tight ends are. So that being said, I've often said this offseason that the Giants offensive line needs to hit the ground running. In other words, get veterans in here. You know, you can draft guys, but basically plan to go with veterans so that you don't have to wait for these guys to develop. You can hit the ground running. Do you agree with that? And if so, who are some of the veterans out there, the pending free agents, that you think could really help turn this offensive line around?
Obviously I agree with you. I wrote a piece on it about guys that they should target. I don't think that the move should be to bring in some high-level rookie unless you are looking to make a change at right tackle. Like, if you're looking to make a change at right tackle, then okay, go out and draft the right tackle of the future. But the truth is that the talented offensive linemen that are in the draft, all of them play left tackle. So now you'd have a dilemma on your hands the way you have a dilemma on your hands with Evan Neal, which is you're asking the left tackle to play right tackle when they've been a lot more comfortable at left tackle. What I think they should do is to go out there and be aggressive in free agency and not bargain basement free agency. They need to spend legitimate money in free agency, bringing in a guy that's not just there for a year, or not just there as a stopgap, or not just there for nostalgia. So, miss me with the whole bringing back some of the old Giants that maybe they shouldn't have got rid of in the first place. Let them people go somewhere else. Bring in some blood that's young enough, that's hungry enough. Pay them legitimate money, plug and play, and let's move this thing on. Obviously, the guard at New England, I always struggle with his name.
Like Owanu?
Yes, Owanu. I think he should be target number one. I think if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm camped out outside of his house at 12:01. I'm knocking on the door and I'm saying, I want you to come and be my starting left guard, possibly my starting right tackle right now. I think that is priority number one. And then I would bring in another guard to go, a veteran guy who knows how to just dig people out, and put those two veteran, really good offensive linemen in the middle, flanking your second-year center who needs to make a step, and then hope that your right tackle becomes the right tackle that you drafted with a top 5 pick.
Gene, speaking of offensive line and right tackle, Joe Schoen has said that the plan is to run it back with Evan Neal at right tackle. We've seen 2 years of him. He's struggled. He's yet to look comfortable. Last year, he had the injury issues. I think a loss of confidence seeped into his game. That being said, Gene, Shane was asked, why do you still believe in him? He says, I saw it on tape in Alabama. Players change, obviously. They get better. They regress depending on the coaching. So when you look at Evan Neal's tape, is he a salvageable prospect at right tackle, do you think, or should he be shoved inside the guard?
I saw it on film at right tackle over the last 2 years. We've seen good reps. It's not like he has been horrible every single play. That's such a New York Giants fan over exaggeration. He hasn't been awful all the time. He's just been bad in key moments when you needed him to be good. There have been lapses in focus. It looks like to me there's been lapses in technique. It looks like to me, but we've seen him do it. The problem is, can he be relied upon to do it consistently? And if the answer from Joe Schoen is yes, then you leave him at right tackle. If the answer from Joe Schoen is I don't know, then why are we going back down this road again? Like, don't fall for the same mistakes that previous iterations of your job has fallen for. Hey, we drafted somebody here. It didn't work out for them here, but we kept on trying, and then we just cut our losses. Instead of saying, hey, I have a chair. It's not comfortable as a lounger, but it's really good as a rocking chair. I'm going to just make it a rocking chair right now. I'm not going to keep on trying to make it a lounger, and make that move right now. If you think about Pugh's career was one of those where they wanted him to be something. He wasn't that something. He went somewhere else and played another position and played it well for years. He comes back here. They have him at the position that he played well for years. Someone gets hurt, and they put him right back at the position he was never good at. Like, come on, people. Like, we can't keep doing these things. And so, for me, if Evan Neal's your right tackle, and you believe that he can be consistent, then let him play right tackle. If he's not, if you don't think he's ever going to get to that consistency that you need out of your right tackle, move him to left guard, put him next to Thomas, and have one of the biggest, strongest, most athletic left sides in all of football. How is that a bad thing?
It's really not, considering what they've had, for sure. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball. We haven't really touched on defense, but we're going to right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking to bet on the excitement of sports, check out FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. FanDuel also offers a wide variety of bets, and not just on the NBA. You can bet on the NHL, MLB, futures, and so much more. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon today and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, joined by Coach Gene Clemens of Giants Country. And we're talking Giants personnel. We're talking draft. We're talking all kinds of good things. And Gene, we haven't talked about the defense yet. A glaring need, obviously, is edge rusher. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. Yeah, they have Azeez Ojulari. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, but that's one of the positions where I also think they're going to go the veteran route there. I mean, do you agree with that, or is there a more pressing need that maybe they need to go veteran route?
I don't know if I necessarily disagree that they should go the veteran route. I just don't know who you go and get. Like, who's going to be there that you can really legitimately go and get that's going to want to come to New York at this point in their careers? Because most of the guys that you would pinpoint that are going to give you legitimate edge rushing production are guys who are probably looking at a place where they have a chance to win a championship, right? And so nobody that's a free agent thinks that the Giants is winning a championship next year. We just have to be honest about that. So if that's the case, then your Clownies are not going to be the situation. Your Houstons are not going to be a situation. Like guys that we've seen get double-digit sacks or get close to double-digit sacks or have that ability, they're probably not choosing. So now you're left trying to go get Boogie Basham type characters. And sorry, but that's just not going to get it done. Meanwhile, the draft has an abundance of these super twitchy, like edge rush guys that are just chomping at the bit to go and hunt the quarterback. Go and get one of them. Go get two of them. Like, let the world be your oyster with these guys. Oh my gosh, well, he doesn't hold up well against the run. Don't play him against the run then. Like, let him go hunt when it's time to go and hunt. I don't believe that you're bringing in a veteran unless you're going to bring in a veteran you're going to have to overpay for in order to get the production. I don't think that's the way Joe Schoen wants to go. That hasn't been the way he's seen to do business over his first few years at the helm. I don't think it'll be where he starts now. I think if he overpays for anything, it's going to be on the offensive line, not on the defensive line or at edge rusher. But there are a lot of 4.40, 4.5, 40, like long, twitchy edge rushers in this draft that you're going to get in round 2 because there's just so many of them, and the defensive backs are deep, the wide receivers are deep. There's going to be more than just the 3 quarterbacks that go in the first round. It always happens. Offensive line, there's a bunch of tackles that are going to go. There'll probably be 1 or 2 guards, maybe a center that goes in the first round. I think when you see how much talent's out there, safeties, like you're going to get an opportunity to draft a twitchy edge rusher in round 2 to go with Thibodeau and hopefully a healthy Aziz that now you can keep all 3 of them healthy because you rotate them through.
Okay, makes sense. Now, speaking of which, cornerback 2 is another spot the Giants likely need to fill. They have a bunch of young guys. I think Shane Bowen, the new defensive coordinator, probably doesn't deploy as much man coverage as Wink Martindale did. Does that help, the Giants in that, they don't have to maybe get a veteran that maybe they can get away with going with youth there? Or how do you think they approach that cornerback 2 spot?
Well, I don't see them investing legitimate high round draft picks on corner because they've gone to the well so many times just in the Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll era. What I do believe is that because they may not play as much man as they've played in the past, that opens up for a lot of veteran guys that are out there that probably aren't fit to play heavy amounts of man, but can come in and do a really good job in a zone type of scheme to come in and get at a good bargain to add some more veteran leadership if we're operating under the assumption that Adoree Jackson's not coming back, right? So there's that money that opens up from Adoree being gone. How do they do it? I think you'll see them bring a veteran in, and then maybe somewhere in the back end of day 3, take a flyer on a guy who has flashed a lot of athleticism that can come in and continue to progress with some of these other young athletic guys they've brought in that we just haven't seen be able to hit the mark because maybe they're better as a zone cornerback than they are as a man cornerback.
Interesting perspective. I mean, certainly, I don't think Adoree's coming back, by the way. I mean, I'd be surprised, but, like I said, they kind of stocked up on defensive backs last year. They drafted 2. Banks is clearly, cornerback 1. And, sticking on the defensive backfield, Xavier McKenna is another one whom the Giants have to make a decision on. They probably have made a decision, but we have to kind of see how that plays out. McKinney believes he's a top 5 safety, even though he hasn't had the Pro Bowl or All-Pro nods. But that being said, you look at how the safety market is shaping up. and I think Byard from Philadelphia is being released, if I'm not mistaken. Does McKinney, does his market maybe take a hit, do you think? Or do you think he's just going to be, so overly priced that the Giants aren't going to be able to afford him?
I don't think it's if the Giants can afford him. I think do the Giants want to afford him, right? When we say he believes he's the top 5 safety in the league, well, how many other combination safeties are running around the league right now that are doing what McKinney does? He can play your strong safety. He can play your one high safety. He can work in a 2 high situation. People keep talking about him not or effort things with him, but that just doesn't show up when you look at the stats. Like, low effort guys don't have high level stats. That's just not how this works. So if he was so like lethargic and not trying like people always claimed that he was doing last year, then why is he always around when the ball gets popped out? Like, why is he always around when balls are getting intercepted? Why is he always around a tackle? It doesn't make any sense. And you know who else knows that? Xavier McKinney. So if you're not going to franchise tag him, which you won't do because that franchise tag is much, much higher than Saquan Barkley's franchise tag is. If you're not going to franchise tag him and he hits the open market, there will be people paying for him. So then it just becomes if the Giants are willing to once again let another homegrown talent that they were able to scout and evaluate and get maximum value out of walk away for free. You've already done it with Love. Are you going to then do it again with McKinney? I think the answer to that should be no, but I don't get paid to make these decisions. And I haven't liked a lot of decisions that have come when it comes to whether or not to let go and or bring back free agents or guys who have been staples in that defensive backfield. I didn't like the Bradbury decision. I thought it was foolhardy. It was foolhardy. I didn't like the Love decision. Love just went out there and balled out. He could have been balling out. And if they let McKinney go, it'll just be another in what I believe are bad decisions by Joe Schoen that are starting to stack up that nobody actually wants to like hold him accountable for.
All right. You must be a mind reader because I was going to ask you for the final question here. What's the one thing you think Joe Schoen could or couldn't do that would just absolutely be like catastrophic in terms of the roster building process?
If he trades up. If he trades up in this draft for a quarterback, because it probably would be for a quarterback, right? If he's trading up. There's more than a likely chance that one of those 3 receivers are going to be there if he decides he wants to go receiver at 6, just based off of how we know the quarterbacks are going to go and the elite level offensive linemen that are out there and your edge rushers. If he trades up and gives up valuable assets for next year and maybe even into the future to go get a guy and put him behind the same offensive line that everybody has told us that Daniel Jones can't operate behind, and then expect that somebody else will, it's either A, going to talk about how horrible of a decision it was to bring back Daniel Jones, not to just not franchise tag him, but to bring him back, period. Is going to show that, and is going to say when that guy doesn't have success, because you would have to assume that if other quarterbacks have struggled behind this offensive line, that a rookie is going to struggle. I don't think he'll get a chance to see that quarterback ever get to his maturity. And then we'll be right back in this cycle again, trying to break in another quarterback. Head coach and GM to decide if they want to work with those guys that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable have put into the fold. I actually think the unpopular thing that he could do that would be the best move for him is to trade down. Like, if he trades down, he's going to get killed for it. But I 100% believe, depending upon what he gets back in the trade, it would be the perfect move to make right now. Because from 6 to probably 18, 19, you're going to get an elite level prospect at something. And we've already sat here and talked about it. Giants need edge rushing help. Giants need inside linebacker depth. Giants need offensive line help. Giants need cornerback. Giants need receiver. Like, you're going to find that from 6 to 18, you're going to find an elite level somebody somewhere. And so now if you trade down, that allows you to just take best player available and not worry about whether or not to take a quarterback, because all of those guys will be gone. And maybe you stacked another second round pick or a third round pick that you can address quarterback in day 2 of the draft because you didn't address it in day 1. I definitely believe they will address quarterback in the draft. I am not convinced they're going to address quarterback in round number 1.
Nor am I. I keep thinking it's going to be wide receiver, which makes the most sense. And quarterback, possibly, by the second round, it would be my opinion.
You know what? An Odunze Penix stack. Getting a Odunze and then flipping back and getting Penix in the second or the third round, depending upon how quarterbacks are running. That would not be a bad little stack to make, to put those two talents together. And now you allow your quarterback and your wide receiver, who will probably be playing with the second unit to start with, to be more comfortable because they know each other.
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense to me. But of course, what makes sense to you and I doesn't always make sense to the Giants. And you know how the NFL community, they tend to see things a little bit differently than we on the outside do. But nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting offseason. It does get underway in a few days. The franchise tag window, as I mentioned before, closing on March 5th. Then in a few days, we're going to have the legal tampering period for free agency as we kind of put the draft on hold for a little bit. And how the free agency period, I think, plays out could give us some clues as to how the Giants are going to approach the draft. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, folks, make sure you keep it here on Locked On Giants. We will continue to bring you all you need to know. And of course, check out Giants Country. Coach Gene has been doing the Combine Daily Reports. He's got a mock draft coming out, but he's got other stuff coming up. He's doing a great job over there. And we appreciate your support over on GiantsCountry.com, which is part of the Fan Nation Network, as well as here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you for making us your first listener of the day. If you tune in on YouTube, your first watch of the day. For Coach Dean Clemens, I'm Patricia Traina, and we will see you tomorrow, Giant fans.